I've previously shown using VoiceAttack to modify itself, including with automated tasks. This does run into challenges in terms of selecting specific buttons and boxes to click on. In my last video about this, I used two methods. Firstly, I made the program press the tab key several times to get to the appropriate field. This is quite slow if you have many fields to tab through. Secondly, I used the screen coordinates of the OK buttons for saving my changes. Because I wasn't moving the windows around mid-process, those buttons were going to be in the same place during that session, and so the screen coordinates work. But the buttons would only be in those places during that session. These coordinates won't work now, and I would have to measure them again to do this again. It would be ideal to find the coordinates of the OK button relative to the bottom right of each window, because then you can make a VoiceAttack action to move there regardless of the window's position and size. You can't do this using the normal VoiceAttack function for finding coordinates in a window, because you have to be multiple windows deep in order to be able to use this, and once you're there, you can't click off any of the ones in between. Using AutoHotkeys Windows Spy is possible, though you would need to check which of the coordinates corresponded to the VoiceAttack coordinates, and those coordinates would refer to the top left, so you would need to subtract them from the whole size of the window to get the displacement from the bottom right. This brings another challenge in terms of not being sure which of these coordinate sets corresponds to the size of the window as you're measuring it. But I have an easier way. I made 5 VoiceAttack commands. I needed to give it ranges of values for x and y, but I didn't want to use the standard ... method, as it would give too many combinations and mistaken results. Instead, I used Excel to make increments in multiples of 5 all the way up to 400. First paste into Notepad to get rid of the grid squares. Recopy the text. Then paste into WordPad, Word or EditPad Lite, so that it comes out as the digits with tabs in between them. Copy one of the tabs, paste it here, and replace it with semicolon. Then close it with square brackets, and put a letter after it. I did try putting the letters in front of the numbers, but the system wasn't keen on it. But once that's done, you paste it in here, and while it goes up to 400, it's only got 80 different options for X, so the system won't even complain. This one, called actual movement, is executed by each of the other commands. This one duplicates the values of X and Y, then does the appropriate multiplication so that they are the displacement from the bottom right corner of a window. Note I've selected application window coordinates relative to the bottom right, which is why these two values need to be negative for it to move from the bottom right onto the OK button. If I wanted to measure from a different corner, I need only adjust this action and change as appropriate which of these is multiplied by -1. In my system, I start by saying default place, which sets x and y to 0, then moves to the coordinates x, y, relative to the bottom right, landing precisely on the bottom right corner. Each time I say a number followed by x or y, it updates the variable, then runs actual movement to update the current coordinate. I can repeat this saying new numbers followed by x or y until I've landed on the button I want. I can then check my recognized commands to see which vertical and horizontal coordinates were needed. Importantly, x and y only change when you say a number before one of them or when you say default place. My command testPlace saves the current coordinate, moves to where the current xy position is, waits a moment, and then moves back to where it was. This is a good way to test if it's reliably landing on the button, regardless of the position or size of the window. Here is a demo of finding the coordinates of the OK button. Default place: 200x, 100x, 120x, 200y, 100y, 50y, 35y. That probably did 350. 30y, 25y, 20y. And now I can test it. Test place. Test place. Test place. Test place. Looking at the last values I set for each of x and y, I've got 20y and 120x. Or if you don't feel like scrolling through your current commands, you can set one called current coordinates, which simply writes to the event log the values that were used to move it to the appropriate button. I've used x1 and y1, the duplicated ones, because those were the ones that were multiplied by -1 to get here. Current coordinates. So as I found before, -120 and -20. Other useful positions are the text box for choosing the category for your command relative to the bottom left corner, the box where you put the name of your command relative to the top left corner, and the first action in your list of actions relative to the top left corner, which avoids having to press the tab key 10 times. But the uses of these 5 commands doesn't end there. In some games, the screen starts scrolling as your cursor moves towards the edge of the screen. And you can calculate the minimum distance for this using these commands. 200x, 100x, 200x, 150x, 125x, 145x. It's just moving. 150x. If a game strongly prefers to be full screen, for example World of Goo, it's very difficult to measure this minimum distance without a command set like this. Forced full screen games also make it much harder to measure the coordinates for clicking on buttons, but with these commands you can again find your coordinates fairly easily. And while these coordinates can be used in VoiceAttack for modifying its own commands with loops, you could also use the resulting coordinates to make it easier to edit VoiceAttack using Vocola 3. Vocola 3 can set coordinates within a window, with an interesting tweak. If the given coordinate is negative, it is considered to be coming from the opposite side of the window. So a negative x value means coming from the right side, a positive means from the left. Similarly, a positive y value comes from the top, and a negative y value comes from the bottom. So if you were making your profiles entirely by voice, even if you were using VoiceFinger, like I've demonstrated in the past, it would still be worth making these shortcuts in Vocola 3 to more quickly get to the useful window locations and buttons. Start listening. Command box. First action. Categories box. OK button. This last command, OK button, might seem unnecessary, as Windows speech recognition will generally recognize the OK button by saying OK or click OK, but sometimes it misunderstands each of those. This command would get it right every time.